a Monday night. It is currently the 1st of June. It is 10:33 Eastern Time, and we finally have a NFL news day because it is the 1st of June. We had some news that we did see coming. We have some news that we didn't see coming. Then we also have the NBA Finals, which is a historic matchup, which is kind of a parallel to the 1999 matchup. So you're not going to want to miss us break down that, go over all of the ridiculous stats that have happened in the NBA playoffs so far. And then we're also going to go over the AFC South today. That's right. It's that time again where you sit by with some popcorn, you maybe crack open a carbonated beverage. Maybe you're watching it in the morning, get some coffee, and then you watch us pick every single team's schedule leading into the season. Last week, we did the NFC South. We only had one team with a winning record. They were all 9-8. We had three teams at one point in the season, all being 6-7. No pun intended. Everyone laughed because it was really funny. But definitely don't want to miss that. Maybe bookmark it for August and come back to it. But I'm excited that we actually have news to talk about today. And out of nowhere, I guess we should get the elephant out of the room, or that is the defensive player out of Cleveland for Jared Verse. He goes to the Rams. I saw that. I was like, holy shit. I don't know about you.
I saw that. I'm like, this is as cinema as it gets for NFL offseason. Miles Garrett going to the Rams, instantly making them the favorites to win the Super Bowl. They move on from Jared Verse. They give up a first, a second, and a third round pick. The Rams, they don't care about picks. They moved on. They got Miles Garrett, the best defensive player, probably since they had Aaron Donald a few years ago. So I saw that. I'm like, this is as cinema as the NFL offseason gets.
Yeah, it's as cinema as the NFL offseason gets, and this just made me happy because I've seen TJ Watt kind of hit his head against the wall repeatedly with Pittsburgh. He's won Defensive Player of the Year. You could argue he's been one of the best defensive players of the 2020 so far. And who is his competition? Well, it's in division. It was Miles Garrett. And, the Browns are just in a different spot in their career than Miles Garrett is. And to see someone with his talent get an opportunity to go to the Rams, and now the Rams add not only Trent McDuffie, but Miles Garrett, possibly the two best players at their position available to get. Not necessarily the best, not saying that Miles Garrett's the best, even though he won Defensive Player of the Year. Trent McDuffie's the best corner, but they are on the Rams right now, and seemingly a year where it seems like the Seahawks didn't necessarily take a step back, but they did lose the Super Bowl MVP. That hurts, especially if you can't replace Kenneth Walker. And then also, I do feel like you lost a few key players defensively. So you start to see the armor, you start to see some of the chinks in the armor fade a little bit for the Seahawks. And then the Rams, they go out there, draft Ty Simpson in the first round, and then they're like, you know what? We can give away another first round pick because we're going out there getting Miles Garrett. We extended Matthew Stafford in the offseason, so they're saying, hey, we are all in on the next 2 years. And this is exactly what I expected from the Rams. This is why they got to a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford, why they got to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff, just going out there, being aggressive. And all things considered, I feel like this is a good trade for both teams. A lot of people are saying that the Cleveland Browns got screwed over. Like, I don't necessarily think that Jared Verse is a terrible player. I do think it is kind of comparable to Jared Goff versus Matthew Stafford. Then you got a first round pick, had a lot of really good first round picks this year. So I do think it is pretty even for both teams, depending on what Miles Garrett does the next 5 years and how healthy he's able to stay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for the Rams, they get a known edge rusher who has been arguably the best in the league the last 10 years for the Browns. And then Jared Verse is a guy who's only 25 years old. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's been really good for them, but ultimately, that guy that gives you that next step. Jared Verse has been giving them 10 sacks a season the last two seasons. Miles Garrett last year had 23 sacks, a record in the NFL, so they're getting him high. Miles Garrett has been pretty healthy historically throughout his career with the Browns as well. Now he gets to go to a true contender where he gets to pair up against the Jared Goffs of the world, the Brock Purdy's of the world, the Jalen Hurts of the world, just giving them absolute hell. They upgrade their edge rusher, and while also for the Browns, they get a guy that they can build around still on that defensive side of the ball, who's still a very good player, and they get a first round pick if they can hit on him, a second round pick, and then 2029 they have a third round pick to pick as well. So they got a pretty decent haul, I would say. Maybe they could have gotten 2 first round picks elsewhere, but you upgrade, you still have a linebacker, plus you got a few more picks. So I think it works for both sides.
Yeah, I just don't know if you're getting another first round pick elsewhere that is as good as Jared Verse, to be honest, if you're the Cleveland Browns, because I do think you have to look at Jared Verse as good of a first round pick that you're going to have if you're Cleveland. So I do think that Miles Garrett is definitely better than him, but I would say it's probably about 25% better. So I do think maybe you could have got another second round pick, maybe an extra third round pick, but Jared Verse makes up a first round pick on his own. He was one of the best rookies when he was drafted. And I do think now with Todd Monken in Cleveland, it was definitely seemed like a coaching hire where no one else wanted to go there. He's had his issues as the Baltimore Ravens coordinator, but some guys are better overall, just general team managers. And we've seen people struggle as coordinators, be good head coaches. We've seen really good coordinators be bad head coaches in the past as well. So I do think he's one of those players. Seemed like he just went there because no one else wants to coach Cleveland. But you look at their first round picks, and it seemed like Cleveland was actually cooking a little bit. And now you get younger, and Jared Verse is more on your timeline, where Miles Garrett is on the Rams timeline. So I do think this trade does make sense for both teams. Like, obviously, you're not going to get equal value to Miles Garrett. He won Defensive Player of the year last year and broke the sack record. Like, it's going to be pretty hard to get that, but I don't think like Jared Verse is going to be a slouch. And you did get a first round pick and 2 other picks. So, what did you think overall? Just do you think the Browns lost this trade, or do you think this makes sense for both teams?
I think it makes sense for both teams. You still have someone like Jared Verse to build around your defense. Also, Miles Garrett, not too long ago, requested a trade about a year or two ago, so he was a little bit distraught. If you're Todd Monken, you want to be able to build your team up with your players. You get a guy that is a very good edge rusher, and you also get a first, second, and third round pick out of it as well. So overall, if they can hit on their picks, that's ultimately going to decide whether they win it. Because if it ends up being like Detroit and the Jared Goff trade, where they ended up getting the Aiden Hutchinsons of the world, they ended up getting the Jamison Williams, and they ended up winning that trade because of it, then we might be looking back a little more fondly. But overall, it's a win for both sides. Rams upgrade their edge rusher, and the Browns have a guy to build around plus some picks. So it's a win for both teams.
And do you think this is the Rams looking at Chicago? Like, I mean, that game was pretty close against the Bears and Caleb Williams last year. Caleb
Overtime.
Williams seemed like he was figuring out the playoffs on the fly, a la a massive comeback versus the Green Bay Packers, one of the biggest lore moments ever if you're a Chicago Bears fan, especially with what that rivalry means to those two cities. And then you follow it up with the Cole Kmet catch, and we're like, are the Bears actually going to come back and do it? Then DJ Moore slips in the snow. They trade him to Buffalo, go slip in the snow somewhere else, and then Josh Allen can get picked off in a playoff game next year. But we don't want that on our team. And then maybe Ben Johnson takes a step back, learns from some of his mistakes here. They draft another good tight end. Seems like they're trending definitely in the right direction defensively. So I do think this is the Rams kind of eyeing the competition. Like, Chicago's probably going to be even better next year. And then we have to take a look at the Seahawks having more confidence, especially with Mike McDonald. They have some consistency there. And then you look at what the Saints are doing too. So this is a move where it's like the Rams are trying to guarantee a Super Bowl matchup. And if they have to go to Chicago, I can't say that they're a lock for the Super Bowl. Do you think like the Rams should be the favorite, or would you still take a team like Chicago or Seattle?
I would take the Rams simply for the fact that they've done it before. So I believe in them. They have a really good roster. Obviously, Matt Stafford's already taken them there. But other than that, like I look at the rest of that South. I mean, we have the Cowboys and the Eagles who will be competitive in the East. The Bears, maybe the Lions if they come back to form. But otherwise, I don't trust anybody in the South to dethrone them. I don't really trust anybody else. The Giants are still in rebuild. So really, this is the Rams saying, like, this is our year. If they go out and win it, then They did it a second time. So I trust the Rams in the sense that they're aggressive, but they're tactical about it. They upgraded their team. They got Trent McDuffie, and I feels like they're putting all their chips in for this upcoming season to win the Super Bowl. So I think they should be the favorites.
Yeah, and I think the Rams have to take a look at last year's playoff too, like with a glass half full, because did you make it to the conference championship? Yes, but did you finish with some eyebrow raising losses in the regular season? Absolutely. Monday Night Football versus Atlanta. Bijan Robinson goes crazy. What was that? And then you go up against the Panthers, and Bryce Young, without his left tackle in the second half, almost led the Panthers back, and it took a last minute drive from Matthew Stafford to ice that game in Carolina. That's the second time those two teams matched up, and it was a great game. And then you look at the Chicago win, seemed like they kind of shot themselves in their foot, and then you didn't score in the fourth quarter against Seattle. Like, that's a huge problem for you. And then so you have to look at it like, well, offensively, Puka's in rehab. Devontae Adams is back, yes, but he is a year older here. So you look at that wide receiver room, and it is looking a little bit fragile right now. Where I do think defensively, you have a little bit more room to breathe now to take some of the pressure off Matt Stafford.
Yeah, and they can go out. I know the next person we'll talk about is a wide receiver. If they can go out, upgrade a wide receiver, get someone like Tyreek Hill to fill in, be that third receiver for them, do what they did with Odell a couple of years ago, had that Super Bowl run with him, then I think the Rams are as complete of a team as any other team in the NFL at this point.
Yeah, but that was a great way to start June here, coming into the year. And it is June, so it's Pride Month. So Tony Romo did come out and say that he proposed to Josh Allen. Josh Allen said, "No, I'm already married." And he had to turn down his offer, but that was just some news that came across. I just had to put that out there. Other news, though, that was the news we didn't see coming. News we did see coming. AJ Brown is a Patriot. We all knew this was going to happen. AJ Brown wanted to be drafted by the Patriots. The Patriots should have drafted him, but they decided to draft other players who we will not name on the
N'Keal
show.
Harry.
N'Keal Harry. I didn't want to say it, but you had to say N'Keal Harry. But
I had to
AJ
do it.
Brown, longtime Patriots fan, longtime Mike Vrabel fan. Mike Vrabel was his head coach in Tennessee, so got the connection there. He is now a Patriot, but the compensation was a first overall pick, first round pick, and then we got a fifth round pick as well. What were your thoughts on the compensation for AJ Brown?
I do think the Patriots overpaid for him, but just like with the Eagles when they traded a first round pick to get AJ Brown, I think maybe a second or third is probably more favorable, but the Patriots are awful at drafting. And right now their number one receiver prior to him was Romeo Dobbs and Demario Douglas. So they needed to upgrade the receiver room. The Jags had come in last minute and they were whispering to the Eagles trying to acquire him. So there were other suitors that felt like they were kind of locked into it. So giving up a first round pick, you essentially draft a first round pick with him, which I think is worth it. And then that fifth round pick means nothing. So overall, for a team that just made it to the Super Bowl, you've now acquired two wide receivers. So now your receiver room is actually comparable. You still have Travion Henderson there. They've done some work to the O-line in the offseason as well. So for a team that, just like the Rams, are being aggressive, I think this is a good move for the Patriots. And overpay maybe, but they needed to do it.
Yeah, and AJ Brown is actually younger than I thought. He's only 28 years old. So you're getting a guy who probably has at least 5 or 6 years left. So you're essentially getting him for 5 years of productive football. I say probably has about 3 or 4 years left of elite AJ Brown football. And the first round pick at first seems like a lot, but for what the Patriots need going forward, this is going to be a team that's going to be in win now mode, and they still have plenty of cap space. So I do think they could afford to give up a first round pick. As you mentioned it, they did work on all the areas that they needed to. Their defense was awesome last year, and I don't think that's going to be any different. And you really just needed to add veteran wide receivers that Drake May can rely on, because he was relying on a lot of smaller targets and a lot of inexperienced guys and Hunter Henry last year in the playoffs. And they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. And now they add A.J. Brown. Well, last season, he only played 13 games, but where he played 15 games last year, and he had 78 receptions and a little over 1,000 yards with 7 touchdowns. So you essentially add 1,000 yards of offense, and this is also with AJ Brown being unhappy, wanting to be traded at the beginning of last season, sticking it out with Philadelphia. So he's kind of quiet quitting, and then when you add that in combination with Romeo Dobbs, who you picked up, he had 724 yards with 55 receptions last year. So you're essentially adding 140 catches and around 1,800 yards. And Romeo Dobbs is in a very busy wide receiver room where it seems like the Packers never really had a wide receiver identity. And then you also have a couple games with Malik Willis in there when Jordan Love is banged up. So I do think you're adding about 1,000 yards of offense, and with AJ Brown, it's just a surefire veteran, and you needed a big wide receiver, and then you still kept Kayshon Boutte. So think about how good Boutte's going to be instead of being your de facto number one. Now you have AJ Brown, Romeo Dobbs, Kayshon Boutte, and then you also have Kyle Williams, who showed up in some really good spots last year. So then you start to talk yourself into this wide receiver room actually being pretty good and above average, which is all you need for this team, especially with Travion Henderson, who's going to be a year better, and Ramondre Stevenson, who had a little bit of a revival last season after a disappointing year in 2024.
Yeah, I agree. I look at this receiver core. I had said this for the last 5 years. They needed two legitimate receivers. Getting Romeo Dobbs, big physical receiver, kind of a Mike Williams build, and then AJ Brown is a true de facto number one. He should be getting 150 targets this next season, 1,200 yards, 5 to 10 touchdowns. So he's going to be great for him, and actually a true deep threat for Drake May because he didn't really have one last year. And now the receivers that brought them to the Super Bowl last year, they have Kayshon Boutte, they have Matt Collins, Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams. These are guys that are good players, but they match up a lot better when they're your third, fourth, fifth in receivers. So, and then you look at their defense, which has already been really great. One of the best defenses last year. That should continue under the Mike Vrabel regime this year. And then their offensive line help. This Patriots team should be right back in the mix for the Super Bowl in the AFC.
Yeah, and okay, so let's go through the top contenders of the AFC. And which wide receiver room you would take over New England right now? You taking Buffalo's wide receiver room right now, or New England? Like DJ
Well,
Moore.
DJ Moore, Khalil Shakur, Josh Palmer. Patriots have a better receiver core right now than the Bills by far. I would take AJ Brown over DJ Moore. Khalil Shakir and Romeo Dobbs, you could fight it out, but maybe Khalil Shakir. But then the rest of that receiver room becomes very weak very quickly. Josh Palmer should be a fifth receiver.
Yeah, and I think they have like good depth right now on the Patriots wide receiver room, which is why I'd give them the edge over a team like a la Denver. I would take AJ Brown over Cortland Sutton. Definitely Jalen Waddle over Romeo Dobbs. But then once we go to the third and fourth guy now, and then you go to a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, like
Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, Rashid Rice, he's been good, but he's also been getting into a lot of trouble out off of the field as well. Xavier Worthy is just kind of quick. Taquan Thornton, not a very great receiver, and then the rest of the receiver room dies out pretty quickly. Then you look at a team like the Texans, they have Nico Collins, no one else really around him. So there's not really any legitimate contenders that I'm worried about receiver-wise outside of the Patriots. They did get a lot better. And then also what they have on defense should make them a strong contender as well.
yeah, and then it's like you go through like the top AFC teams. The Bengals definitely have the best like firepower, but they still have their questions defensively in the offensive line. So I do think the Patriots now can confidently like match up with most of the league wide receiver room wise. And then now Demario Douglas is like, oh no, we forgot about him instead of oh that's the fast guy. We can always have a safety watching what he's going to do. So I think this will be the first Patriots offense in a while that's dynamic and they can actually be more efficient now. And that, like, you add AJ Brown, people are like, okay, he only had 1,003 yards last year. Kayshon Boutte only had 1,700 yards. So, like, yes, but now they take attention away from Kyle Williams, Demario Douglas, someone who's really fast, and it takes the pressure off of Kayshon Boutte to have to beat um, the best corner for Seattle one on one the whole game. Now he can take the slot corner.
Yeah, exactly. And AJ Brown is still one of those top receivers. I know the last 2 years haven't been a great scheme fit for the Eagles, a team that's mostly run heavy, plus with what Jalen Hurts does on the ground. But if you look at the first 2 seasons before they got Saquon, 1,500 yards you could pretty much just guarantee. And then his time in Tennessee, pretty much the same. The Patriots, I don't see them as a team that's going to be leaning on the run throughout the entire season. I think they're still going to be pretty pass heavy. Travion Henderson will get his carries, and so will Ramondre Stevenson. But this should be a team that could be pretty pass heavy moving forward.
I still think they rely on the run. This is still a Mike Vrabel team. So, like, a Mike Vrabel team is about being physical, in your face, and pushing you around. And I think there's still question marks with the Patriots' offensive line. Definitely helps when you have weapons who can get open downfield and be reliable for you. But I still think the Patriots are going to be run heavy just to take more pressure off of Drake May.
Yeah. But I think it's either way. I mean, with what they've done, I look at the Ravens receiver room. I would take the Patriots there. Steelers, I would take the Patriots. AFC South, pretty much everyone there, I would take the Patriots over them. So they've poised themselves now, if they wanted to repeat, that they can make it back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but that is AJ Brown. That is Miles Garrett. Couple quick hitters for the news here. We had Russell Wilson accept a offer to join CBS. So looking like his football career is over. So it's kind of a almost soft retirement for Russell Wilson, or just taking a year with CBS to get his mind right. But how do you feel about him being a commentator?
I think he could be better than Tony Romo. But other than that, I don't. Is he going to be talking during the game, or is he going to be an analyst that's during like the halftime show? Because for Russ, he's a guy that I just feel like a lot of people don't like at this point, and I don't know what his expertise on the NFL field is going to really be like for him. Sounds like he's going to be a sports analyst. It doesn't specify what his role may look like, but he will replace Matt Ryan with CBS after former quarterback has left to go to the offseason. So he's replacing Matt Ryan as far as breaking down the film. He is a guy that has had a lot of experience in the NFL. Obviously, he's a champion as well. So him replacing Matt Ryan, I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay too. I think like Russell Wilson's gonna be one of those players who's gonna be like talking for 3 minutes, and then I'm just gonna blink and be like, wait, what? What'd he say? I don't
Yeah.
think it'll be like anything like offensive or too outrageous. I think he'll just be like kind of him in the pocket. And I think it'll be cool because Russell Wilson's one of those players. I feel like he had like aura as a rookie. He was like a sensation breakout. And then you had him in the Legion of Boom. And then ever since that 2014 Super Bowl, he's kind of just had some of these moments where he's just had some real aura losses. Then he got bullied by Sean Payton, and then he kind of went to Pittsburgh with the Giants, and now people have kind of forgotten about that. So I do think this would be a good way for him to potentially help his perception of him long term, and maybe fix how people view him as a NFL player if he can be likable on CBS.
I think he can be likable enough because, I mean, most of his time in Seattle, everybody adored. He was one of the most likable players in the NFL. What really hurt him was Denver gave him this massive contract. They gave up a bunch of picks for him. It failed miserably, has the largest cap hit in NFL history of dead money. Pittsburgh was kind of forgettable. And then New York, I don't think anyone's going to remember that he even played on New York. So when it's all said and done, he's officially retired. He's an analyst on CBS. We're going to remember the Russell Wilson moonballs in Seattle, the Legion of Boom, all of that. And I think he's a charismatic enough guy that history will favor him.
Yeah, so I do think this will be a good move. Like, when Sean Payton hates you, it's a tough hurdle to get over, especially when you're in Denver. So I don't think he ever got a fair shot there. Um, Other than that, Odell was broke, And I thought this was Odell like signed with the Giants to come back and retire a Giant. And no, it was Russell Wilson is coming back to play football for the Giants. And honestly, I was kind of surprised. I know he has had some financial issues off the field. Cannot confirm the exact details, but um, do you think this is just him needing a little bit of extra money now, or do you think we're going to see Odell Beckham Jr. come back and have a really solid 20 catch, 350-yard season for 3 touchdowns?
Well, I mean, what's the last we saw of Odell Beckham? He had 9 catches for 55 yards with the Dolphins in 2024. We are now in 2026. He's 2 years removed. He hasn't scored a touchdown in 3 years when he was with the Ravens. I think what we can expect from this is his last season. He's getting paid with the Giants, probably not all that much, but I'm expecting like 25 catches, 300 yards, and like 2 touchdowns. That's what we should all be expecting from this Odell. He hasn't played in 2 years, and when he did play, he wasn't this Odell Beckham that we know and love back, when he did that famous catch. So I just think his playing days are behind him. He's taking a paycheck. He's had some money issues, and he's just taking a check. Which, you know what, I can't blame him.
Yeah, definitely can't blame anybody for taking a check. Am I right? And the Vikings, last news here, hired the assistant general manager Teasley from the Seattle Seahawks as their new GM. So they fired their GM, weren't really happy about the direction of the team, felt there were some whiffs here, and now he gets Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy, in kind of a sit down year where he gets to decide who the quarterback could be going forward. Do we want to keep Murray? Do we want to go with McCarthy? Do we want to go a different direction? Do we want to keep Justin Jefferson? So the Vikings, I definitely think, are one of the most interesting teams going into next season storyline wise. And Seattle has had a pretty good track record drafting. They've made some good deals in free agency as well. So do you like this hire with him coming from Seattle?
Yeah, I think poaching the talent for what the Seahawks were able to do. He was the assistant GM for Seattle, so he helped them construct the team that they have. The Boye Mathis of the world that joined them, Devon Witherspoon. So he's been around for all of them, so he's been good at drafting. The Vikings, I feel like, are a team that is somewhere in the middle of the pack nowadays. I feel like their defense has been really good for them. They have a lot of the weapons on offense, but they haven't figured it out at the quarterback position. Whether it ends up being Kyler or JJ McCarthy or potentially a future guy, I think they're in good hands. Poaching the talent that brought them a Super Bowl last year, I think overall, I like this hire.
Yeah, but that is the Vikings general manager. That's the NFL news we had for you today. Some huge things going down. 28 minutes of excellent NFL analysis. I don't know about you. I went out Thursday night because I'm in Texas, and where I live, I'm about an hour from San Antonio in Austin, and the vibes are immaculate. We went to that. Do you remember the bar we were at with Tyler that was outside, and the guy came up to you and he was singing his own karaoke while there was a live band going on?
Yes. South Austin, right?
Yeah, he's like, "Do you want to sing with me?" We don't like the music the band is playing, so we decided to sing our own songs.
All right, buddy. Drink
All
another one.
right. Yeah,
This guy
that
needs
was
a
a
beer.
experience. I don't know, has that happened to anyone else here? Have you gone somewhere with a like a live cover band and then someone just starts singing at you that looks like they've had too much Jack and cocaine in the bathroom? That guy was intense.
He was wired.
He had the
He's a guy
crazy
you don't
eyes
want
and
to
he
piss
was
off.
like, "What song do you want me to sing?" I was like,
None.
"Excuse me?"
You should play the quiet game, buddy. That's what we should have said to him.
You should have
But I
given
can
him like
agree.
an
Vibes.
Eminem song.
Yeah, have him sing "Till I Collapse" or something. But yeah, the vibes are immaculate in San Antonio. New York is absolutely buzzing. I saw they painted the T stations for the Knicks colors, which I don't know why they don't just have that already. I just feel like that's good energy. But New York is humming, San Antonio is humming, and the NBA world as a whole, I feel like, is rejoicing. A lot of people don't like the Thunder very much, and they fell to them in Game 7. Spurs move on. Now we get to see Knicks and Spurs for the first time since 1999. Wemby makes his first title. So a lot of milestones that happened here in the playoffs.
Yeah, and this is I think is going to be a really good playoff matchup where I was this was a game going into game 7 where I wasn't exactly sure where it was going to go. You kind of had a feeling for some reason that the Spurs were going to win. I thought this series would go 6 or 7 games, but I thought the Thunder could do it. And, the Thunder, Jalen Williams, he wasn't able to play. And then you had AJ Mitchell also go down, who in game 5 was the one who led their historic output of 76 bench points for the Thunder here in Oklahoma City. And then they go up 3-2. And then you have a huge game for San Antonio in game 6 where they bounced back, and it just seemed like one of those blowouts where like they beat them so badly where it seemed like the Thunder just wanted to go back to San Antonio. And then you go to game 7 and then the second best player for the Thunder absolutely disappeared. I mean, I feel like people aren't talking about Chet, and Chet is kind of a meme, so he's getting a pass here, but like he was at one point he had the highest field goal percentage in the playoffs, and then he only has 2 shot attempts. He tries to drive on Wemby and then just falls down in this game. He only had 4 points and then only played 33 minutes, where Isaiah Hartenstein is getting minutes over Chet. Like, there is no world where Lou Dort and Isaiah Hartenstein should be getting minutes over Chet. I mean, he should be not as good as Wemby, but he should be close, especially with what he can do on offense. So I feel like just him falling apart in game 7, he did SGA no favors. And then at one point, it seemed like Caruso hit his wrist. And then the Spurs, they just wanted it more. And I'm glad that game 7 was really competitive and it wasn't just a runaway blowout where we actually saw the Spurs lead, Thunder recapture it, and then San Antonio take the lead back. And then as soon as Wemby hit 5 fouls, that was another moment in the game where like, oh, are the Thunder about to win because Wemby has 5 fouls with 7 minutes left, and like he's gonna have to go to the bench. So then at that point, I thought the Thunder could come back and win, but a little play happened where Luke Cornett chases down Hartenstein and then potentially has the best block since LeBron James blocking Andre Iguodala in Game 7 of the NBA Finals,
Yeah.
where as soon as I saw that Luke Cornett block, I was like, okay, that's over. Like, if this is what Luke Cornett is doing against Isaiah Hartenstein, running down the fast break, that was the moment I knew the Spurs were going to the finals. But until then, I was like, Wemby with 5 fouls? I don't know. And there
Yeah.
were moments where Luke Cornett was kind of getting cooked.
Yeah. No, that was the moment. The moment that Luke Cornett had that block, you just knew. The block by James, it's probably the most iconic since then. If we're talking about any particular playoff block, that is probably the moment of the entire series that will probably define it. But for the Thunder, I mean, Chet Holmgren, the other thing that I get at is like 4 rebounds. You're a guy that's 7'1" and like 30 pounds, and you get 4 rebounds in game 7. You have 4 points. You don't do anything all that valuable there. SGA has a great game, 35 points, gets to the line, almost has a triple-double. He plays really well. But the Thunder, what really hurt them, Alex Caruso hurts his wrist, like you mentioned, shoots 3 of 14, isn't the same after the fact. And that just wasn't enough. And it's a shame. The Thunder will definitely be back, but they just played a little bit more sloppy. And the Spurs just have built this team to perfection. You have the De'Aaron Foxes of the world, great addition. I knew that when he signed with them that this was going to be a huge signing for them. And then Steven Castle has a great game as well. 6 assists, huge moments there. Has a big steal for them as well. And then just their bench just outperformed them at that point. But I think the Spurs just kind of grinded the Thunder, especially these last 2 games. And I'm glad that they were the ones that prevailed.
Yeah, and I think, everyone was rooting for something different, and we now are going to have 8 different NBA champions. And I feel like these finals matchups have been interesting. Pacers And Thunder, Tyrese Halliburton, what could have been if he doesn't pop his Achilles in the fourth quarter now? People are going to take a real close look at that NBA Finals where the Pacers got there. They're on a generational run. Tyrese Halliburton was already playing with an injured ankle, and then he tore his Achilles. If he finished Game 7, don't know what could have happened there. And then the year before, we had Boston with Luka's first time getting to the finals. So we've had some pretty interesting matchups. And, the Thunder got there pretty easily where they swept the Suns and then they swept the Lakers as well. So kind of had an easy path, and now they go to Game 7 in this series, and now we are tied for the most Game 7s in NBA history. And this series felt like probably the best playoff series since the Thunder and Warriors when the Warriors came back from 3-1, and then the Warriors and Cavs following that up where they go 7 games and the Cavaliers come back from a 3-1 deficit. And like you see Wemby, who's only 22 years old now, and this is the second youngest team in NBA history to make an NBA Finals too.
Oh wow, yeah, and it's huge. This feels like it's the moment where this is what's going to define the 2020s now. Wemby, if he wins this title, now we're talking about the new Wemby era potentially. And then with the Knicks, obviously we'll talk about them in a second, but somewhat of an underdog overall with Jalen Brunson being kind of passed around, uh, signing for with the Knicks. Nobody really taking him seriously when they signed with him. And then with the way that they've constructed that team, getting Karl Anthony Towns out of Minnesota, making some big moves for Mikal Bridges, they've been a lot more aggressive. Where the Spurs are more of that traditional build through the draft. A lot of these guys they got just these last couple of years in the draft. Some of them drafted much later. So it's kind of the tale of two different teams. One that's been kind of more like how the Rams are in the NFL, and the other one just building traditionally through the draft like we've seen historically.
Yeah, and they're building through the draft, so it like brings up the question, does this feel like a Spurs team that is going to be more similar to when like the Celtics faced the Warriors in the NBA Finals, or do you think it's going to be closer to when Tim Duncan got to the finals his first year in 99? Because like you even look at the stats with Tim Duncan and Victor Wembanyama here, they're like pretty much identical down to the field goal percentage. Tim Duncan averaged 23.2 points a game. Victor Wembanyama averaged 23.2 points a game. Identical. Tim Duncan actually averaged more rebounds than Wemby, 11.5 per game, where Wemby only averaged 10.8. But Wemby averaged 3.5 blocks to Tim Duncan's 2.6, which is pretty impressive for Tim Duncan. And then they both averaged 51% from the field, with Tim Duncan beating him by 0.1%. So people are making the comparison here. And I do think there were times in the series where I was just looking at the NBA the next 5 years, and I thought there were a lot of moments in this series where I'm like, Wemby can get a lot better, because there are times where he was inefficient and he was struggling to get into the paint, and he was struggling with his shot. Where if he just gets a consistent turnaround jumper that's money every time, or a nice mid-range shot like Kevin Durant has, like there are definitely some times where I looked at Wemby and I'm like, he still has a lot of room to improve, which is going to be scary for the NBA.
What scares me is the fact that most of the series it's been if he takes over offensively, they win the game. And he relatively did that in this game compared to where he's a little bit more passive, more of a facilitator. They weren't successful. So I'm still waiting for him to become this guy that just takes over every game in the playoffs, gives you that 30-point game, triple double, like we can expect from him. But even just as a second year guy, making it to the finals, how early he's done it, 22, which I think he's got to be younger than LeBron, got to be younger than Jordan. I think the only younger one might be Magic Johnson, but getting there as early as he did, this feels a lot more like a Tim Duncan beginning of a dynasty type of thing than it feels like it being like the Celtics.
Yeah, for sure. And there's also some other similarities in their path to get to the NBA Finals. Did you know that they both beat the Trailblazers and the Timberwolves in their runs to the NBA Finals to face off against the Knicks?
That's wild. And then they faced their rivals in the conference finals too. Tim Duncan was rivals with Kevin Garnett. Obviously, Chet and Wemby are rivals, so they faced off there. Rivalry is a tough word when one of them has 22 points, has averaged 3.5 blocks, and then the other one has 4 points and 4 rebounds for a guy that's 7-1. That's a rivalry that it's like, I think this is a little more overblown.
Yeah, like Chet turning into he wasn't even as good as Kristaps Porzingis was on the Celtics run to the NBA Finals. So like I do
No.
think like this is primed for a perfect rematch next year because I do think the Spurs get better next season based off of how young they are. They're the second youngest team to get to the NBA Finals. You're still going to have Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, Keldon Johnson, um, all there next season, minus potentially De'Aaron Fox. You might flip him just to get his contract off to free up some room to pay players like Dylan Harper, Castle, and Vassell. But you might have the Thunder come back next year with a healthy Jalen Williams and AJ Mitchell, which is, I feel like, what they missed the most was just that extra scoring punch coming from somewhere besides SGA because God forbid Chet pick up any slack at all on offense. So I do think that this is going to be a really good rematch next year, and this could potentially be a trilogy in the conference finals, and then we could actually get some real rivalry and excitement.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what the NBA has been missing too, is we do remember like Celtics and Heat in the early 2010s, Rockets and Warriors in the mid 2010s, Spurs and Lakers of the 2000s. We've had these historic rivalries face off either Eastern or Western Conference, and now it feels like this rivalry has been resurrected, and there's a true rivalry in the NBA.
Yeah, and then who knows? The Timberwolves could actually make a move next year, and if Anthony Edwards gets some help, maybe package Julius Randle or Rudy Gobert for someone like Bam Adebayo, and you're able to get Anthony Edwards some help. So if we could get another team in the West, that would be cool. But I do think this will be a really good rivalry the next few years. But the Spurs are on a historic pace. Um, oh yeah, the last thing I was gonna say is the Spurs actually looked excited to win too, which was refreshing. You mentioned last week how nobody likes the Thunder because no one showed up to their victory parade and it was just them after they won the finals in the locker room. Like, ew, Michelob
Gross.
Ultra is disgusting, and it's them all like trying beer for the first time. And they're like, ugh. So it's like it didn't even seem like they were like that hyped after winning. Where it's like the conference championship, you could see how much the Spurs cared. You had that iconic photo of Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle after the game, and then just Wemby hugging everyone after. It's like, oh, this team is actually excited to win. Wemby actually looks like he cared, and the Thunder kind of have this can't be bothered, a little bit too cool for school, which is like
Nonchalant.
nonchalant. It's like I get it, but that can also hurt you when the only one showing up and bringing the energy is Alex Caruso, and if he injures his wrist, then you're screwed.
Yeah. I just think the Spurs team also is a lot more likable. I feel like Wemby, he's going to be somewhat like in the we keep comparing it to the NFL, but like a Patrick Mahomes, where we see him just dominate for the next 5 to 7 years. That's what we expect from him. Next year, wins the MVP potentially, goes on to maybe win a second title. But I think for them, like we're entering into this Spurs era, and with how they've constructed their team, especially with how the NBA is set up now with the luxury tax, this is a team that I think does have some legs, like the Thunder do.
Yeah, and especially just moving off that De'Aaron Fox contract because De'Aaron Fox was also playing with a hurt ankle in this game, so that's something that can't could have held the Spurs back. So they can definitely improve against the Knicks. I feel like if he does that, we will get to the Knicks and Spurs matchups, but just want to run through some stats for the Spurs in the regular season and into the playoffs. I'll just hit you with these one at a time. The 60-win turnaround, San Antonio became just the fourth team in the NBA to win 60 games this season after winning fewer than 35. So Mitch Johnson, I thought he had a spectacular series against the Thunder, but I do think that speaks a lot to him and Wemby staying healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's huge. 60 wins. They're also one of the only 40 in 20 teams too, the Phil Jackson rule. If they win, that continues onward as well, because the Knicks
The
didn't
only
qualify
one.
technically. Yeah,
Yeah, they didn't.
yeah. So that would continue.
Record streak. The team set a new franchise record by winning 28 or 26 out of 28 games during the stretch starting in February. And then historic statistical profile, they're the first team ever to win 26 out of 28 games while averaging over 120 points and 30 assists.
Jesus Christ, that's insane. Especially with how good they are defensively, that's disgusting.
Yeah, Dylan Harper setting a casual record with 7 steals in a playoff game, too.
Despicable.
And then they end their 6 season playoff drought. Get that. And then they're the second youngest team weighted by playoff minutes, the second youngest team to ever reach the NBA Finals, trailing only the 76-77 Blazers. The average age is 25 years old on this team. And you know why the age is that high, too, is because Kelly Olynyk, Mason Plumlee, and who's your
Harrison Barnes.
Harrison Barnes, and who's your guy? Bismack Biyombo is
Bismack
also on the thing.
Biyombo.
So they essentially have 3 centers that they don't play on the team. It's like Kelly Olynyk, Mason Plumlee, and Biyombo are all there just to go up against Wemby in practice, and they're all different style bigs there. And that's raising the age of the team by a solid year or two at least. So like the real average of players actually playing in the game is probably more like 23, 22. Wemby's like one of the older players actually playing, and then it's Luke Cornett. And Luke Cornett's not even that old. He has to be like 26.
Luke Cornett's 30, technically.
He's 30. Yeah, he
But
was a G League man.
but Harrison Barnes also, he's 34. He weighs up the minutes. He played 3 minutes in Game 7. Very important minutes there. But everybody else, like De'Aaron Fox, he's a little bit older too. I think he's 28. And everybody else is like 22, 23, 24. So super young lineup. Really exciting team.
And then that is the regular season milestones. For team milestones in the playoffs, in the first round against Portland, the Spurs became the first team in NBA history to trail by 15 plus points at halftime and win the game by at least 15 points.
Huge.
And then as far as defense, they're the first team since blocks and steals were tracked in 1974 to total 150 steals and 130 blocks in the first 3 rounds leading up to the finals.
That's insane. 150 steals and 130 blocks.
Yep, first team
That's
to do it.
that's ridiculous. That's the big thing for this. Like they have buckets on this team. Obviously, you have De'Aaron Fox and Wembanyama. They can get a bucket anytime. It's the fact that they can hold a team like the Thunder to 80 points in Game 6 with what they can do on defense, what they can do blocking shots. Like it's just not fair. They're like a boa constrictor for this team.
Yeah, Dylan Harper was guarding Chet and contesting him and getting ball when he would go to block. So it's like you can put Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper on Cat, and you're going to have a bunch of younger physical guards who can take him on the perimeter. So that'll be an interesting matchup. And then they also defeated the champs by winning Game 7 in Oklahoma. They ensured that the NBA will have 8 different consecutive champions.
Which has got to be the first time that's ever happened in the NBA by a wide margin.
Yeah, for sure. One is the most consecutive years in NBA history without a repeat champion.
It's got to go back to like the 70s as far as that long. Maybe even the 50s. No, I don't know how much further it goes. But like it's got to be pretty far back. Because 8 consecutive championships. Usually you have the Lakers dynasty that's in the 2000s. Obviously the Bulls in the 90s. I don't think it can't go back more than 3 or 4 years prior to this run that we're on now.
The longest streak of seasons without a repeat champion in NBA history is 18 consecutive seasons. During this stretch, no team won back-to-back titles between the 1969 Celtics and the 78 and 88 Los Angeles Lakers. So Bill Russell retires, and there is 18 consecutive seasons where we had a new champion. The second longest streak is currently ongoing, which is 8 consecutive seasons. So, and that is kind of the that's not necessarily the best era of the NBA, I would say, between 1970 and 1987. Kind of like, isn't that the cocaine era?
Yeah, the 70s is defined by cocaine. So, like, okay, the cocaine era didn't have any repeat champions. The Celtics won multiple rings in that time. The Lakers won multiple rings in that time. So, like, that's also a bit deceiving as well. I mean, I know we saw, like, the Trailblazers and the Wizards and a few other teams, the Supersonics win, but that's also in the era where the NBA wasn't even on television. And it was also the Coke era. I mean, you have an era that's defined by cocaine. How are we not supposed to take that seriously?
The parody era, it says the best teams were the Washington Bullets and the Seattle Supersonics were the most consistent contenders, meeting in back-to-back finals. But however, the Lakers arguably were the best team in that specific stretch in terms of overall success, finishing the era with a 60-win championship team in 1980. So when it's the Washington Bullets and the Seattle Supersonics, it's the best teams, two teams that don't exist anymore.
That's like if you sim to 2K in like 2090, and those are the teams that are the best.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then that is, they also had 7 players make their playoff debut, including Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper. And then as far as Wembanyama's individual records, most blocks in a game, set a new NBA postseason record with 12 blocks against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Some people said those were goaltends, but were they or were they not counted as blocks? And is it or is it not a record that we'll just open up the books and be like, no, that was the game where he had a lot of goaltending? No, he has the record, and it will be in the record books until he breaks his own record.
There's going to be an old guy in the comments for the rest of our life. That was a goaltending. Most goaltendings of all time. Like, now it's a block.
He scored 35 points in his first playoff game, passing Tim Duncan's previous Spurs record for highest scoring postseason debut. Tim Duncan had 32 points, which is pretty impressive for the era that Tim Duncan played in and not being a three-point shooter.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that's huge.
And then he passed Tim Duncan again. Wembanyama recorded his 8th game with at least 25 points and multiple blocks, the most in a single Spurs playoff run, moving past Duncan's 2005 and 2006 marks. And then as far as his defensive dominance, his 59 blocks through 16 playoff games already exceed the single postseason total of every other active NBA player, and he hasn't even played in the finals yet, and he's broken the record.
That's a crazy stat. That's a crazy stat. 59 blocks through 16 games, and he now leads the active NBA players in blocks in postseason.
And he
blocks.
missed games. He was injured in the Blazers series.
He missed, what, 2 games in the Trailblazers series?
Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So
he's gonna. I mean, he might be the greatest of all time. We might be talking about the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it helps to have 12 blocks in one game, and then the Spurs and Thunder series went 7, which was cinematic. But yeah, he's already setting some pretty ridiculous records. But that is his defensive dominance there. Then we switch over to the Knicks and Spurs. Last time they met in the finals was 99, and the Spurs won 4-1 to win their first ever NBA championship. The Spurs closed out the series with a narrow 78-77 victory in Game 5. Woof.
Oof, that is a rough
Oh,
series. Now, I can say for the Knicks, this Knicks team is significantly better than that 99 team. I'll look at what that 99 team was, but between Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, what Josh Hart brings, like, this team is rested. They had the fastest track to the finals of any team here that's playing in the NBA Finals. So, I mean, this Knicks team is a team that I do think poses up against the Knicks against the Spurs fairly well. So I'll pull up this Knicks 99 Knicks, but overall, I think this series I don't think is going to be a 5-game series. Also, that 99 Knicks team was the first 8th seed to ever reach the NBA Finals. So they're facing up against Tim Duncan, David Robinson. I don't know if he's here yet, but Manu Ginobili. And the Spurs team consisted, their best player was Ben Davis, Marcus Camby, Larry Johnson, Latrell Sprewell, a team that won 27 games, by the way, in 1999 to make the NBA Finals. It was a shortened season, but they were 27-23. That was the 99 Knicks.
yeah. And this year, the Spurs have the only trio aged 22 or younger in NBA history to score 200 plus points in a single postseason, joining the 2011 Thunder with Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, and Victor Wembanyama.
That's huge.
But the Knicks are coming in with a 271 point differential, which is the highest for any team entering the NBA Finals. Their 123.3 offensive rating is the highest mark by Eastern Conference champion since 2003 for the New York Knicks. So while the Spurs are coming in high, we just went over all of their historic stats. That is a pretty big differential for the New York Knicks. Now, they were playing in the East, but I'm not going to discredit the New York Knicks because it is hard to get to the NBA Finals. You can only play who is in front of you, and I do think that this team is going to match up really well against the Spurs. The only question I have with the Knicks is going to be their bench production. Is Shamit going to step up? How consistent is he going to be? And then I feel like the Thunder are just going to play Brunson straight up the first game and then double team him again. And they're going to play it similarly to how they played the Thunder with Caruso and Josh Hart, where they're going to put Wemby on Josh Hart and he's going to fade into the paint a little bit. They're going to double team Jalen Brunson. So it's going to be who on the New York Knicks is going to go out there and beat them at the 3-point line, and how different is Karl Anthony Towns going to be than Chet Holmgren, and then what is the difference of going up against SGA and Jalen Brunson? Because Madison Square Garden is a historic arena, but sometimes that's a bad thing because players tend to play their best in Madison Square Garden, especially Victor Wembanyama coming from Paris. He's a global player playing in New York. Like, he loves New York. He plays chess in the park there. It's a great time for him. So, what are your overall thoughts on this matchup? Because I do think the Knicks are better and healthier than the Thunder were to end that 7-game series.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Jalen Williams being hurt, this Knicks team is fully rested. They know that this is kind of their year. If they don't win it this year, we don't know for sure if they can make it back. So I think this Knicks team is going to be really hungry. I see this series going 6 or 7 games. I still think the Spurs end up pulling it out, but I think with the Knicks, with the way that they've blown out their opponents, granted, the Hawks series, I understand the Hawks are not seasonal contenders, but you still have the Sixers with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. The Cavs have Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, and Evan Mobley, and they took care of business pretty handedly against all of those teams. So I think they're going to be hungry. I also think they have the size to compete with the Spurs as well. You have Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby. He's no slouch either. He's not going to be pushed around. Mitchell Robinson is another big figure there. Hopefully he's able to play for them. So they have the size to compete with them. The big thing, you mentioned their bench. I also think defensively the Spurs definitely take the edge, where I'm not convinced the Knicks are going to be able to contain the De'Aaron Foxes of the world quite like how the Spurs are going to be able to contain someone like Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily gonna be contain Jalen Brunson. It's gonna be make his life as difficult as possible. And can the Knicks create as many turnovers from the Spurs that the Thunder did? Because the interesting thing was De'Aaron Fox was out to start the series. Stephon Castle was essentially operating as point guard, and we saw Stephon Castle have 2 games in the series with 10 plus turnovers. And then you look at the last 2 games. Dylan Harper wasn't as erratic as he was earlier on in the series. He kind of seemed to settle down, and then so did Stephon Castle, where him, Dylan Harper, and Wemby are kind of learning on the fly. Had some turnover issues. Where like, is Stephon Castle just going to turn this series over at this point? And then he really turned it around, which helped them a lot. And then it's those guys like Champagnie, Keldon Johnson, that show up out of nowhere that you just forget about, because we talked about the Spurs having the first trio to score 200 points at 22 years old or younger since the 2011 Thunder. But then you have the 6th man of the year in Keldon Johnson. You still have Harrison Barnes, who is coming off the bench and can give you some good minutes. And then you also have Julian Champagnie, who went 6 for 10 from 3 in a game 7 and had 20 points when he was cut from the Philadelphia 76ers so they could sign Mac McClung.
Ouch. That's tough. Well, I know matching up wise, the Knicks led the series 2-1. They beat them in the NBA Cup Finals. They had a close game on New Year's Eve. Spurs pulled it out 134-132, and then Knicks blew them out in March, which I believe Wemby was out that game, but still defeated them. So the Knicks, regular season wise, have the advantage, and they are NBA Cup finalists, and they have won that ring. So either way, the Knicks are going to end this season with some hardware that they can put in their banners. But overall, matchup wise, both have huge size. I just think, like I mentioned before, I think Jalen Brunson is the guy that's going to be most disrupted when you have all those Spurs players that can go at him.
Yeah, and it's the real question of Karl Anthony Towns, because Karl Anthony Towns can go down as a legend if he shows up, is able to guard Wemby, but I don't know if he's going to be as tough on Wemby as someone like Caruso. Like, can Josh Hart and OG Anunoby and Karl Anthony Towns give Wemby as hard of a time as Rudy Gobert, Alex Caruso, and Isaiah Hartenstein? That's just a question we need answered. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns went up against Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, who are kind of soft, to put it politely, in the NBA playoffs. And then they also went up against Joel Embiid playing on one knee as well, essentially. So, yes, Karl Anthony Towns has played well on defense, but how much is that the Cleveland Cavaliers matching up against you, who have kind of been the Toronto Raptors of our era? But the part I do struggle with is the Knicks are big, and OG Anunoby and Josh Hart can keep up with San Antonio's guards size wise and strength wise, where Stephon Castle can't just push his way through people as much in this series as he did against the Thunder. Where it's like, also though, you look at it and Dylan Harper, like Caruso was pushing around Wemby, and then Dylan Harper's like hitting step back threes on him, hitting mid range jumpers as well. So it's like, I definitely think this is going to be a matchup where just the overwhelming momentum for San Antonio breaking through on the New York stage, it's like almost the ultimate tease for Knicks fans, where you get to the finals. It's the first time you have an opportunity to win your first finals in 53 years, but it's like, sorry, the Spurs
It's
just
not your
skipped the
turn.
line.
Yeah, they skipped the line. I mean, the Knicks are starving for it. And honestly, New York deserves this ring, but at the end of the day, you're running into what's going to be the dynasty of the 2020s. You're just coming in at the wrong time when the era of Wemby has begun. So I like the Spurs in 6. What's your take on how do you think this series plays out, your prediction wise?
I think it goes 7, because the NBA has been on a really good streak as far as parity. I think this is going to be big. I think this is going to be awesome. Defensively, I mean, the Spurs, we said it before, 150. blocks, 130 steals, or vice versa. We had that stat up earlier, so they set an NBA record there. Defensively, Wembanyama already has 59 blocks, which is the most of any active NBA playoff uh, performer, including the finals. So it's like defensively, I do think the Spurs have enough to get it done, but I do think this is going to be a back and forth 7 game series, and it's going to be game 7 in San Antonio. So I do like the Spurs to win it at home. They did it on the road, which is really tough, but I can see them falling down again 3-2 in the series. And dare I say it was Jason Tatum, Boston Celtics esque to fall down 3-2 and then come back. That's what the Celtics have done against Philadelphia, Milwaukee in the past, going up against Embiid and Giannis, and then pulling it out there. So I do see the Spurs going down 3-2 again, maybe splitting 1-1 at home and then going 1-1 in New York, winning game 5, lose game 6, and then game 7 in San Antonio.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to break it down. I think this is definitely a 7 game series. Both teams match up well. Both have size. Both teams are starving. Knicks fans are going to be loud game 3 and 4, so that's going to be huge. I know there were some talks with Mondani that he might give them face value tickets so that they can all go. So we'll see if that ends up playing out. But
What?
overall,
Who can go?
yeah, apparently he's talking with them to avoid scalpers charging a bunch for their tickets. Apparently he's trying to make the tickets affordable. We'll see if they end up doing that or not, but that could be big if
Bro,
all the
it's
Knicks fans can show up.
it's New York and it's an NBA stadium. Sorry, it's gonna be $4,000 a ticket, and it's just how it is. Like it's part of the fact with the NBA. It's like one of those things where it's like it's gonna be the most expensive ticket in town. The energy's gonna be electric. We don't need to do like face foul tickets. Like, oh, instead of $3,000 to watch the game with binoculars, it's only $1,000. Like, no. I do think scalping is an issue and everything, but even if there was scalping going on, like, is he gonna do that if the Super Bowl's held in New York? Like, come on, man. I get rent control because like people need to live, but this is sports. We don't need to do scalping or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. If they can make them cheap though, that's a win for the sports fans. So maybe that plans out. But either way, there's a lot of rich people in New York too who are going to definitely fill those seats. So New York will be very loud. And San Antonio fans, they get rowdy too. We saw how rowdy they got in the Thunder series. I don't think it's going to be any difference against the Knicks
Yeah, Charles Barkley will be in San Antonio on site.
with all those big San Antonio women.
I had a churro, and let me tell you, they were right. Churro and vanilla ice cream is all you need. But that is the NBA Finals. Covered a lot of stats about the Spurs, covered the Knicks and their historic run coming into this finals as well. And now we are going to go and pick every single game for the AFC South this year, shall we? So we have
No.
the Titans, Colts, and Texans and Jaguars here. What team do you feel like starting with?
Well, I am the Houston Whisperer. We know this. Do you want to start first? Do you want me to go first?
You went first last time, so why don't I start? Let's start with something easy like the Jaguars or hard.
All right. And I'm going to ask Gemini how the Jags did this offseason, and I'll pull up the Jags schedule here. But when I say Jacksonville Jaguars, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think of a poorly run team that is semi inconsistent, that is kind of in a make or break year for Liam Cohen's job. You turned it around last season after trading for Jacoby Myers. Brian Thomas Jr. seemed like he was injured, wasn't quite himself. But you lost Travis Etienne, which is a huge loss because he essentially was your offense, especially in the playoffs versus Buffalo. I don't love replacing him with Chris Rodriguez Jr. and then making Bajal Tootin the guy. And then you went out there, got a key addition at tight end in the second round. So if those picks can pan out, I think this team can be good. But I think they are in kind of a sink or swim season this year where if we get to the playoffs and then we have another year where Trevor's inconsistent, you go 9-8, lose your division, miss out on a wild card spot after promising, it's like, okay, we're starting to see a pattern here with this Jaguars team. So it's definitely going to be a big year for Trevor, but a even more important year for Liam Cohen. And then also, you spent a lot of money on Trayvon Walker this year. That has to pan out, or you're screwed going forward.
Yeah. So I asked Gemini as far as recapping their offseason. Travis Hunter coming back from injury is the main thing. Bolstering their offensive line was their main address in the offseason in free agency. And then in the draft, they went and targeted Nate Borkicker out of Texas A&M, trying to have a more heavy dual tight end setup with him and Brenton Strange.
Is that a good or a bad on the name test for you, Borkirker?
Bad. I don't know. Tight ends are the hardest one to predict, if any of them. Because there's a lot of guys, I'm like, I don't know if they pass the name test. But Nate Borkesher, we're going to have to see him in action. There's too many weird ones that ended up panning out. So I'm going to pass on that one. Brendan Strange, though, we'll see. But Jags, I will pull up their schedule here. They start week 1 against the Myles Garrett-less Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, that is a must-win or season's over. I mean, Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders. You have to win that one.
All right, so they are now 1-0, on track to go 17-0 in our prediction so far. Then they go to Denver, week 2.
That is a... I can see that being a win. They had a good, close, competitive game versus Cincinnati. Came down to the wire. I think Denver might potentially start out a little slow here. So I think the Jaguars can get them early in the season. Sean Payton teams can start slow.
All right. And then week 3, we now have the Diana Rossini, Mike Vrabel, A.J. Brown Patriots. Jags hoist them in Trevor Bank Stadium.
And I think that is their first loss of the season. Don't really see them beating the Patriots or any top teams in the AFC.
Alrighty, well, we'll see how you feel about this next game when they go to Cincinnati to take on Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Yeah, I definitely think the Bengals beat them, and that is a 500 month, so right on par. So I think they either lose to Cincinnati or Denver. I think 2-2 is fair.
All right. So they are now 2-2, and they begin their stretch of international games. So they start in London, which is basically their second home, hoisting the Eagles.
Yeah, I definitely think they can beat the Eagles. Eagles without A.J. Brown, kind of riding Devontae Smith as the number 1 guy. Don't love it, especially London being a home away from home. Actually, more of a home to the Jaguars than Trevor Bank Stadium is. Give me the Jags.
Alrighty. And then they stay in London because why wouldn't they? They host at Wembley the Houston Texans.
They host Houston. I don't think they beat Houston next year.
At all?
No, I don't. That defense is scary now. With Cade McDonald on the defensive line, it's like, ugh. No run game. Not great.
Yeah, it is tough. But now they go into their bye. They are 3-3. They are back at their second home in Jacksonville. And then week 8, they get the privilege of playing Daniel Jones and the Colts.
And I think they win that game of late night grilled cheeses in the quarterback room on both teams.
The battle of the grilled cheese.
How many Capri Suns will be devoured in this game?
A box of 30. You called it here first. And then week 9, this is a Thursday night game, the day before my birthday. Jacksonville at Baltimore.
I will take the Ravens in that one. Feeling purple for your birthday this year. Is this in Baltimore?
All right. This is in Baltimore on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, I don't love that for Jacksonville.
Alrighty. Well, they are now 4-4, coin toss team at this point, for the most part. And then they go to Tennessee to take on the Titans.
Um, I think they lose this game and they kind of have an identity crisis after this one. But I think they can turn it around. They still have the Colts and the Titans again.
Yeah. And then they go to New York to take on the Giants.
Um,
This
no,
is
I don't.
week 11.
I think the Giants' defense at that point in New York, it's going to be too cold, and that defense is going to be in full force. So yeah, I can't see them winning that game.
Alrighty. Well, lucky for them, they face the Titans again, this time at Jacksonville.
All right, and this is the oh shit, we got to pull everything together this moment now, and we still have hope, and I think they win that one.
Alrighty. Well, they have some momentum, which is just in time for them to go to none other than Chicago to take on the Bears.
Um, I think they get lucky in this one and win. Ben Johnson goes for it on fourth down, doesn't convert. I think the Jaguars can win that one.
Alrighty. Perfectly balanced at 6-6 now. They're looking good. And they go to Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football, Week 14.
Yeah, I definitely think they win that game against Pittsburgh. And then I'll actually change my pick with Chicago with that, and then I will have them going 6-7. So I'll
This
flip
guy.
those two wins.
Alrighty. So they are now 6-7, which is a funny number, I would say.
We all love it.
And then they
Everyone
go,
laughs.
and then they, everybody laughs, everybody cries, everyone shits. And then they go to Houston Week 15.
They go to Houston week 15, and I don't think they win that game.
Alrighty. So Texans
6-8.
sweep officially. 6-8. And then they go to Jerry World for Week 16.
For some reason, the Jags seem like a team that will out cowboy the Cowboys in that moment, like similar to Cowboys and Cardinals. So I'll take the Jags in that one.
All right. So not going too far either. They stay in Texas, so not a bad schedule break for them. And then Week 17 flex game, hoisting the Commanders.
I think they win that one. Go 8-8.
And then it all rides down on Daniel Jones. And you know the Jags have historically had their things with the Colts at home in Jacksonville. So this is in Jacksonville Week 18.
Yep, I have the Jags winning, going 9-8, and I think that's fair. 5 more losses than last year after losing Travis Etienne, who's a big player for you. Offensively, they're just too inconsistent. I think this is definitely a tougher schedule. Your mulligan game is against the NFC North this year, it appears, and you're going up against the Chicago Bears. That's definitely a tough one. And then also going up against the AFC North. Some tough games on the road in primetime versus the Ravens. And I just think the Texans defense is a lot better this year, and they can beat you no matter how bad CJ Stroud plays. So yeah, I think 9-8 is fair. Do you think that's too harsh?
I think it's perfectly right. Honestly, I think they might be worse. They don't have a running game. That's my biggest concern for them. And their defense is pretty below average, so I honestly think they might be more closer to 8-9 than 9-8. But with their schedule, with some of their breaks, I think what really benefits them is they face Houston and Dallas back-to-back weeks, so they don't have to travel very much to get there. Um, and then they have their 2 European games followed by a bye, so Europe is kind of favored to them. So honestly, I feel like they have some decent schedule breaks, and you face the Tennessee Titans right after you face the Ravens, so that should benefit them too. So I honestly don't think their schedule is all that hard up until the first half is kind of tough, but otherwise, I think they have a pretty simple schedule.
I feel like 8-9 is fair. But I just think they're gonna be one of those teams. They had a really good season, new head coach. Teams are gonna catch on to what they're doing, and then just Trevor's new haircut. I don't know. That's like the
That's another
hair
thing.
he had a little bit of like. Is he still gonna have his mojo with the short hair? Like, It's not even like that he got a haircut. It's like he got a bad haircut where it looked like he went to Sports Clips. Like I get you have like the sponsorship with them and you do the Sports Clips ads, but that doesn't mean you actually need to go there.
Yeah, yeah. That haircut's awful, and that's why if they go 8-9, it's because of the haircut. Thanks for great clips.
All right. So that is the Jaguars. They are currently in our standings, leading the division, and they are also in the bottom. After that, let's go ahead and go with the Colts here. The Colts are described as the division's biggest wild card due to significant roster uncertainty this year. While the team officially backs Daniel Jones as the starter, Anthony Richardson reportedly mains with the team despite an outstanding trade request and interest from teams like the Jets. So we could see Anthony Richardson in a
Oh
Jets
God.
uniform. I am praying for that. That would be cinematic. That would be awesome. They also lost Michael Pittman, traded to the Steelers. They did keep Alec Pierce and Josh Downs, though. Defensively, the Colts prioritized drafting CJ Allen in the second round at linebacker because they traded their best linebacker this year. But the Colts, for me, like you lost Michael Pittman, and we're just assuming Alec Pierce and Josh Downs are going to be good. I think Alec Pierce would be better on another team with like better coaching and quarterback play, but having to be the best guy when Daniel Jones is your quarterback is a tall task. And then we saw what they look like against a really easy schedule last year. And as soon as they hit that wall, like Jonathan Taylor went from an MVP candidate to forgettable in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I have always felt this Colts team, this iteration of the Colts is just extremely mid. That's why even though that they were the one seed at one point last year, I never believed in them, nor did you. And I don't believe in this team now. Jonathan Taylor, I believe, is now 28, so he's getting a little bit older. You lose Michael Pittman, that's going to definitely hurt you. And then Daniel Jones is your main quarterback coming off of a major injury, a guy who I've never believed in, and why would I ever believe in him? Anthony Richardson is the black Tim Tebow. I've said it before. So the receiver core got worse. Their offensive line is average. Their defense is average. Sure, they have Sauce Gardner now, but the rest of their defense is old and average at best. So this team, I'm expecting their prediction to be anywhere between 6 and 8 wins, but they're definitely not going to have a winning record.
And with the Colts, we're going off vibes. So their first game of the season to start it off is on September 13th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time at home versus the Baltimore Ravens. What do you think?
And that game might as well be on September 11th because it's going to be a tragedy for them. I'm taking the Ravens here.
All right, taking the Ravens here. Jesse Minter starting out hot. Congratulations for your first win. September 20th on Sunday Night Football. Worst Sunday Night Football matchup ever. They are going to Kansas City.
Yeah, and it's going to be September 11th again. It's going to be a double tragedy. Kansas City should annihilate them.
Last game in September, 1 o'clock at home versus the Houston Texans. Start out slow
You know
last
what?
year.
You know what? They did start out slow, and maybe they split. But for me, I'm going to take. It's early in the season. This is when they're hot. I was going to pick the Texans to sweep them. I'll have them splitting. I will take them beating the Texans.
1-2, the Colts right back in it. Chris Sims is starting to get excited about Daniel Jones after this game being that vaunted Texans defense. And then October 4th, first game in October, they go to face the Washington Commanders in London.
Yeah, honestly, if Jaden Daniels is healthy, I do think this Commanders team bounces back. And it's overseas. This isn't going to be easy for them. I will take the Commanders to beat them.
Okay, you like the Commanders defense versus Jonathan Taylor that game?
I don't, but I think this is going to be a great game for those London folks and all half of their teeth.
The London Post. Oi, well, they're Commanders, but the mascot is a pig. What is happening?
What is the problem there? Question is, does Jonathan Taylor score as many touchdowns as the amount of teeth that are in the crowd? That's the real question.
He might. And even if he does get 2 touchdowns, that's still only 14 points for the Colts. So do the math. And then after that, October 11th, they go to Pittsburgh. So they don't even get a bye in between that.
Yeah, and that's tough. I'd like to think they're going to get some wins in here eventually, but Pittsburgh at home, Aaron Rodgers' final season, I'm going to pick the Steelers here.
All right, and then they go to Indy and face off against the Titans.
Indy faces off against the Titans. I'm going to take them beating the Titans here. They got to get some wins in here somewhere. They got to make it interesting.
All right, so Daniel Jones cracks the code to Bob Sala's vaunted defense, and they get their second win of the season, and then they go to Minnesota.
I mean, this is a winnable game, but I like Minnesota. I'm taking Minnesota to beat them.
Right,
I think this we start to see the cracks in the armor with the Colts. This is the season that I think they implode.
and now you are 2-6, and you go to Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, and you had them beating the Colts, I believe. Right? This is week 8. So
Yeah,
you had
week 8.
them, which I believe you had the Colts beating. You had the Colts falling to the Jags. So I'll do the same.
Colts falling to the Jags, so now they are 2-7. Shane Steichen has been fired in our schedule. Who's the Colts interim head coach?
You know, most people would say their offensive coordinator. Most people could say their defensive coordinator. It's the Colts. So we really could draft up. I think my prediction, it's going to be Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning dons the helm, give him a coaching job. I mean, last year they thought about Phillip Rivers. Maybe Phillip Rivers, instead of being their quarterback, becomes their coach. Anything's possible. The Colts, they like talk about. They think outside the box.
Yeah, I think they go Dan Orlovsky. Give him a chance.
Yeah. If this is, are we going to continue this with Dan Orlovsky as their head coach? Because this schedule is about to get a lot more hasty.
He loves Daniel Jones. He's gonna be like, you have the talent of Josh Allen, man, and I love Josh Allen. No one loves Josh Allen more than me, and you're Daniel Jones, and you can move and throw the football. Things you have in common with Josh Allen.
Yeah. If it's Dan Orlovsky, this team is winning 2 games.
All right, they're 2-7 now. After that Jacksonville loss, Shane Steichen's been fired. Dan Orlovsky and or Peyton Manning. I think it'd probably be Cooper Manning is the only Manning they could get at this point to be the coach. And then they go and face Dallas at home in Indy.
You know what? Their coach is fired. They're getting their vibes back up. I think Dallas is a perfect team to get back to winning ways with.
All right. Yeah, Dak sometimes struggles on the road. Could see it there. And then you get the gift of staying at home again, and you face Miami.
And there's a win. I think they can shut them down. I think they can shut down. I don't even know who the receiver core is in Miami. So, yeah, I think that's a win.
They're like, I can shut down. Who do we need to shut down? That's going to be
I
most
don't
teams
even know.
prepping for Miami next year. And then they
Miami's
have
number one is their number one is Malik Washington for Miami and Jalen Tolbert.
uh,
That's bad. That's bad.
Jesus Christ.
Poor Malik Willis.
They're gonna be calling James White out of retirement to play running back, to play wide receiver. Like I know you're a running back for the Patriots, but we need a receiver. Can you help? Yeah. So I think they beat Miami too. So that would put them at 4-8, and then they go to Houston on Thursday Night Football, November 19th.
And I had them winning in week 3. Then that means the Texans are going to beat them on Thursday night, and it's going to be a bloodbath.
All right, so they are 4-9 now, and then they go back home and face the Giants.
I mean, there could be some revenge. I don't know if Bobby Okariki's still on the Giants, but if he is, he's got revenge. They didn't sign him. They let him walk. Vengeance is there, so give me the Giants to beat them.
All right, they are 4-10 now, limping into their bye week. If Shane Steichen hasn't been fired, he's probably going to get fired now. And then they come out of their bye week with 2 games on the road. Nice. First game is in Philadelphia, though.
Philly's Philly. I think it's got to be Philly.
Right.
I
So
don't.
they're
I don't. I just don't see it. I don't know. I think honestly they're going to be last place at this point. I think the Titans are going to be more favorable.
Yeah, and then next game they play the Titans, and you had them beating the Titans last time. So do you have the Titans winning this time?
Yeah, I mean the Colts are demoralized at this point. I think this is when we see the Titans heat up a little bit. We'll cover them next, but yeah, Titans I think get the win.
All right. Then they face Cincinnati on either December 26th or 27th in a TBD game.
I'll take the Bengals. This is December Cincinnati. I will take them taking their job seriously.
All right. So now the Colts are in free fall mode, and it's going to be who's worse at this point, the Browns or the Colts. This is in Cleveland, so who do you think's more likely to get a moral victory in this game heading into next year, the Browns or the Colts?
I should say Cleveland, but I'm going to pick the Colts to win this game. They got to win a few more games.
Okay, they win this game, so now they have 5 wins. They're 5-12, and then they go up against Jacksonville in the last week, and we had Jacksonville winning.
Yep. So the Colts are 5-12. Maybe I'm a little harsh here. Maybe they beat the Commanders in London. Maybe there's a few other wins in there that I'm missing, but I think anywhere between 5 and 8. There's no way they have a winning record. This team is average as it gets. I don't trust their quarterback situation. Jonathan Taylor's a year older. I just don't see it. I don't trust them. I think Shane Steichen's going to be fired mid-season, and this Colts team's going to free fall. This is the season that we lose Shane Steichen.
And the only thing rewarding about it will be Anthony Richardson in a Jets uniform.
That's going to be hilarious.
Then we have the
We need to see it.
Titans.
We do. So let's talk about the Titans. What did they do? I'll ask Gemini here. Free agency and draft. All right. So Gemini says, when talking about the Titans, the draft half, they got Carnell Tate, the top receiver in the draft. Got Keldrick Full, defensive end. They signed a bunch of players to free up the defensive line, including Jermaine Johnson, Solomon Thomas, John Franklin Myers, and John Elliott. They got Alante Taylor, Joshua Williams, Tony Adams. And then wide receivers, they pick up Wandell Robinson and KJ Osborne alongside Kelvin Ridley. And then they added Daniel Bellinger and Michael Carter. So they have some people. And then if Cam Ward struggles, they also have Mitch Trubisky and Hendon Hooker on his side.
What about Will Levis? Is he still there?
He's still there. He's their third string currently. He could
Yeah,
be a
so
Jet.
but yeah, Will Levis could definitely be a Jet. I don't want to see that for him. I think if any team takes a chance on him, it should be like a team like the Texans, who just need someone in case CJ Stroud gets hurt or is struggling. But yeah, you have Will Levis there, so I think him as your backup quarterback for Cam Ward is definitely good. See if he can show some improvement. Sitting on the bench, especially learning with Brian Dayball. But I'm optimistic about this team. I definitely like how they improved on offense. And then Robert Sala, I think, was one of the biggest factors to the San Francisco 49ers holding it together on defense last year, especially the fact that they won a playoff game and beat Philadelphia. I definitely think he left his fingerprints all over that game there. So I think this will be an exciting Titans team. Heading into it, I would guess probably around 7 to 9 wins for this team.
Okay. Well, it gets started with the future home of Anthony Richardson, the New York Jets.
And I will take the Titans to win that game because they
Already.
have a coach.
They have a coach. And then week 2, they host the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I think that's a game. Philadelphia, it's early in the season. We don't really know what the offense is going to be, a little bit rusty. I think that's a game they can surprise the Eagles and win.
Have them beating the Eagles. Okay. So week 2, they are 2-0. And then week 3, they go to New York to take on Jackson Dart, Odell Beckham, and Kim Scadaboo.
Yeah, I think defensively that's too tough for them to overcome, so I'll have them falling to the Giants.
Alrighty. And then week 4, they go to Baltimore to take on Lamar.
To Baltimore to take on Lamar. Um, I will have the Titans winning this one. I think Robert Saleh will have a good enough game plan to compete with the Ravens, and the Ravens have had some meltdowns where they play with their food in the past. It is a new head coach, so they're kind of putting it together in Baltimore along with the Titans. They don't really know what the Titans are going to be there, so give me the Titans in this one.
All right. And then week 5, we have them hoisting the Texans.
Man, I think they lose that game. Tough divisional battle early in the season.
All right. And then they go to Indianapolis to take on the Colts.
And then you had the Colts beating them, so they dropped down to 3-3.
All right. And then week 7, they take on Shador Sanders and the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and I think they should win that game.
Alrighty, so they are riding high. It's November now. It's week 8. They're going to Cincinnati to take on Joe Burrow.
Yeah, though it's a little bit too tough at this point in the season. Bengals are starting to heat up. Even if Flacco's playing, I still think the Bengals win.
Alrighty, then they have the bye week in week 9, and
Ooh,
then they
tough.
go, yeah, middle of the season. I guess it could be worse, but week 10 they hoist the Jaguars.
Host the Jaguars. I believe. Let me see here. Had
You had
them
them
Titans
beating
winning that
the
game.
Jags.
Yeah, so I
Hmm.
will stick with that. Now they're 5-4, potentially sitting at the top of their division or tied with the Texans.
And a more surprising game too. Nobody would expect this out of them. And then they go to Dallas in week 11.
Yeah, and I think Dallas should take care of business.
All right. And then they go back to Jacksonville in week 12.
Back to Jacksonville, and I would have them splitting with the Jags, so the Jags would win that one. Now they're 5-6.
All right. And then week 13, Jaden Daniels comes to town.
Yeah, and I think they can win that game. I don't know where the Commanders' defense is going to be at that point. Run game's been a little bit inconsistent, so I do think the Titans can have a bounce back game and even it out to 500.
All right. And then last true tough game of the season, they go to Detroit.
Go to Detroit, and I think Detroit wins that game, giving the Titans the record of 6-7. What?
And
I've
everybody
accidentally.
laughs.
Everybody laughs. It's so funny. 6-7.
Yeah, you've had everybody be 6-7. I'm starting to think this is a bit.
It's no. It's
Eh,
genuinely an accident, and until the Jaguars, I flipped the wins because I thought they made more sense. But like all the other times it was 6-7. Like this is organic. It's the meme. It's here. It's the meme of 2026 and the 2026 season. Every team's gonna be 6-7.
And everyone's going to laugh. And then week 15, they hoist the Colts, which I think you had them winning, where I had them beating the Colts.
Yeah, so they split with the Colts, and then they get back to 500, and they go from 6-7 to 7-7.
Not as funny. And then they face the Raiders in week 16.
Yeah, and I think they beat the Raiders. Oh, we're 8-7 now, back above 500.
And they're treading well here. They face the Steelers in week 17.
Um, I think Pittsburgh wins that one.
All right. Aaron Rodgers, swan song to Tennessee. And they end it with the Texans in a flex game.
I think the Texans are going to be resting players at this point. Uh, so I think the Titans are going to win this one. Finish with the winning
Alrighty.
record at 9-8. I think like with the Texans, with where I think the Texans will be at in the season, I do think they'll probably be resting C.J. Stroud, a lot of their starters on defense. So But hey, we may get a Davis Mills audition tape, potentially.
He deserves it. I think it's about time that we got Davis Mills somewhere else.
Yeah, Gino got a second chance. Uh, Stafford got a second chance. Josh Freeman got a
Has
chance.
gotten,
Mike Glennon
yeah.
got a chance. And you're telling me Mike Glennon's better than Doug Mills? You're telling me Josh Freeman, Geno Smith have ever looked as good as Dougie Mills did last season or previously for the Texans? Like, that man floated on a team with Lovie Smith coaching. I mean, he's the OG. He's
Yeah.
been there, and he's paid his NFL dues. I think it's time he gets a chance.
I think it's time. I would agree. Jets, give him a call.
But that is the Titans. We have the Texans whisper in the house here. And Houston enters the fourth year for CJ Stroud. So, what are they thinking about potentially paying CJ Stroud? Are they going to give him max money? He had the worst playoff run ever statistically by a quarterback if you look at turnovers, and then he has had 28 turnovers over the last 2 seasons. The team did revamp the offensive line. They added Wyatt Teller and Keelan Rutledge, which should help, and they drafted him in the first round. They also added David Montgomery in the backfield, which is, I think, is a very underrated pickup for this Houston Texans team. So now they can actually have a 1-2 punch out of the backfield. And then defensively, they only allowed 17 points a game, and they get Caden McDonald, who's projected to go in the first round and the second round last year. So I think defensively, you add a huge piece on the interior, and then you add some talent in the trenches and in the backfield for Houston. So I do like the direction, and I think they should be better this season. I mean, you would think CJ Stroud in a contract year will play better than he has the past 2 seasons, right? Right?
I would think, right? They were 12-5 last year. I don't know if they're 12-5 this year, but I think they shouldn't have too many regressions. Depending on how tough their schedule is, I think they should still be around that 10 to 11 win mark because they're still a very good team and their defense is the best in the league, most likely.
Yeah, could still very well be the best in the league. And they start out the first game of the year and they host Buffalo, which has been Josh Allen's house of horrors his entire career.
Yeah, Texans typically own Josh Allen. It is week one jitters for Josh Allen, so I will take Houston getting the win to start out 1-0.
Yeah, first showing with the new head coach for Buffalo as well. How good is that defense going to be without Sean McDermott will be a question. And then this is the first of 2 games at home to start the season. Then they play Cincinnati. The first 2 weeks you get Buffalo and Cincinnati and Houston. Hello. Welcome to the season.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 tough starts, but it's week 2 of the season. The Bengals start out slow historically. So I will take them beating the Bengals as well, getting 2 tough wins to start the season.
All right, so now they are 2-0 with 2 pivotal wins for playoff seeding, and then they go to Indianapolis to face the Colts, and I believe.
And I think they're gonna. I think we swept them. Maybe.
You had the Colts winning.
Okay.
That one.
All right. So they lose to the Colts in week 3. They'll come back for vengeance later.
And then they host Dallas at home.
That's a tough one. Battle of Texas. I feel like in those matchups head to head though, Houston typically delivers. So I will take Houston to beat the Cowboys. But I think this is going to be a tough showing. This is a potential loss.
And then after they host Dallas, they go to Tennessee to face the Titans. I had the Texans winning that one. So now they're 4-1, looking like the best team in the division.
Yep.
And then they go to Jacksonville to face the Jaguars, but this is in London.
Yep. And I believe when you picked the Jags, you had them falling to the Texans. Oh, no, you had them beating the Texans, didn't you? The Texans beating the Jags?
Yeah, I had the Texans beating the Jags. Yeah.
So I'll continue that notion.
So now they are 5-1, and then they don't get a bye week after that, and they come back and they face the Giants at home.
Yeah, after the bye, not a real bye week for them. Come back a little sluggish, have that jet lag. Giants are a good team. I think Giants take them down a peg.
Yeah, well, there's no bye week, so they come
Yeah,
right back from London.
yeah, with that jet lag, good luck.
All right, so now they are 5-2 though, still sitting in a good spot for the division. Probably coast the rest of the season here, and then they go to LA to face the Chargers.
Yeah, and this game's going to be ugly. I've seen these games before. I'll take the Chargers to pull out the win, though.
Yeah, I'm feeling a Chargers win in that one too, from a hater. And then they go to Cleveland after that game to face the Browns.
Minus Miles Garrett, I think the Texans should eat them alive. Should be, I see like a 14-10 type of game, but I'll take the Texans prevailing.
And then they host Indianapolis.
Which I had them winning in this scenario, so I'll have them beating them on prime time.
Right? Now they are 6-4. And then after beating the Colts, they host the Baltimore Ravens.
And I'm going to give some respect to Lamar. I'll have Lamar beating them, but in a tough battle.
Tough battle. All right. So now they are 6-5, but they go to Pittsburgh and face the Steelers.
And I have them beating the Steelers on Sunday Night Football.
Beating the Steelers on Sunday Night Football in that playoff rematch. So now they are 7-5, pretty similar position to last year, at least record wise. And then they go to Washington to face the Commanders.
I think the Commanders, especially with how old they are, I fear that they might be banged up at this point. Texans take advantage and move to 8-5.
All right, Brooke Fears with the Commanders. You heard it here first. And then after that, they go back home and face the Jaguars.
In the Jaguars game, I believe you had them sweeping the Jaguars,
Yes.
and I will continue that notion. I agree.
All right, so now they are 9-5 after sweeping the Jaguars. Then they go to Philadelphia to face the Philadelphia Eagles without AJ Brown, Devontae Smith leading the pack.
Yeah, Eagles are going to be interesting. How good is Mekhi Lemon going to be? I think objectively, when you look at their corners, I think that Derek Stingley should be able to contain them. You have Reed Blankenship there. I will take the Texans to beat the Eagles.
Okay, so now they are 10-5, and they go to Green Bay to face the Packers in a rematch of what was a great regular season game, I believe, 2 years ago. So this is their mulligan game.
Mulligan game. I'll take the Packers to beat them come this time, which sets up Week 18.
All right, so now they are 10-6, and they face the Titans, but they pretty much won their division here, and I had the Titans beating the Texans for that reason, and then they finish out the year at 10-7.
But I think they're a better 10-7 than they were a 12-5 team last year. So with David Montgomery, I know he's a little bit older, but what he be for them, I think he can be effective for them. Their running game should be better. Their offensive line should be better. They had like the worst offensive line in football outside of the Chargers. I think that should be better now. And then obviously what they can do on defense. Caden McDonald should be a stud. So better team, worse record than last year.
All right, so that would put the Houston Texans finishing at number 1 at 10-7 from the Texans Whisperer's mouth himself. And then we would have the Jaguars at 9-8, the Titans at 9-8, and the Colts at 5-12. So what? How do we do against Vegas? They're over under for this division.
So the way that you broke it down, the Texans being the favorites, that was biblically accurate. The Jaguars being second, that was accurate as well. Titans are plus 750 favorites to win the division, so definitely underdogs. Colts at 380. As far as winning records wise, the Titans are currently at 6.5 over under, which I think is
the over.
pretty
Not
accurate.
a gambling man, but if you are,
6.5. I think 7 wins is attainable, 7 to 8 wins. So I would see that. And then for the Colts, we had them at 5-12, and Vegas has them over under of 7.5. Under. I like the under there.
Oh, yeah, hammer the under.
I'm taking that. And then Jacksonville, 8.5. So pretty much nailed that bet right there, as
Really?
far
I'm
as what Vegas
surprised
is
that,
thinking.
they're as low as we are on Jacksonville. So we're right on the money with Jacksonville.
And then the Texans, where are the Texans? Texans are at 9.5. So within half a
Right on the
point. So
money for the top two teams there. I mean, the Titans are definitely a gamble there. We're 2.5 games above the line. The Colts were the same amount but below the line, so we're like still on track, if that makes sense. And then we're right on it for the Texans and Jags, and I didn't even look at these spreads before the game.
yeah, and I honestly think the Titans are closer to 8 wins than 9 wins, but I still think 6.5. I like the over there, and I definitely like the Colts under at 7.5. I think this season they fall apart.
Yeah, but I definitely get the Titans being at 6.5 wins. You definitely want to keep your money if you are the house there. So if you had like a maybe 7.5, that would definitely be too much. So I agree honestly with Vegas having them at 6.5 wins. The Colts though, I can see it. It's still a losing record, so I'll respect that money line.
Yeah, I also think the Titans, the fact that they were 3-14 last year and they have them at 6.5, shows that they expect them to have major improvement. They're betting you that they're gonna pretty much double their wins or more.
Yeah, but that is the AFC South. You have been recapped as far as the news. We went over some delicious NBA stats, a little bit of a finals preview, gave our perspective on how we think these teams match up. Definitely probably do a finals special after it's over, going over the last 8 years, compare it to that 18-year span as well. Which era is better with a drought of back-to-back champions? But we also went over the AFC South. Now it's time for what we've been listening to, what we've been watching this week. It sounds like you had the privilege of going out for a movie this week.
Yeah, and it's going to be the same next week as well. But I decided this week to go and see the Grogu and Mandalorian movie, which is the first Star Wars movie since The Rise of Skywalker in 2019. You guys know how I feel about Star Wars historically. Big Star Wars fan here. The direction that they're going with in this, it feels like, is Star Wars being less about the story of the Skywalkers and more just fun space adventures. They have another movie that's coming in 2027 with Ryan Gosling. So I think ultimately the direction it seems like Star Wars is taking from this, the Mandalorian movie was very much just essentially just a long version of the Mandalorian show episodes. Just felt like there was like 3 or 4 episodes all in one. But it was fun. They had some cute moments. Grogu was funny in there. You had some foresights in there. You got a little bit of nostalgia with some of the things that they show there, um, in different planets. But overall, it felt like a movie that, yes, it's based in the Star Wars universe, but it's a movie that doesn't truly affect the Star Wars story at all. And I feel like, especially with how angry Star Wars fans are of late, just having a fun, campy summer movie like this, keep releasing them. I'm okay with it. If this is just what they're going to release, just releasing essentially Marvel movies for the most part, I'm fine with it. As long as you don't fuck with the Star Wars story. Um, it was fun, pretty light. Action scenes were pretty fun, um, but not a movie it took too seriously. It did feel like it was a little bit longer than it needed to be. There was a point where they essentially beat the bad guy, and then there was 30 more minutes of movie. I'm like, why is this movie still going? This movie should be over. They ended it 40 minutes early. I probably would say this is a lot better, but I'd say it was like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. So overall, pretty good. But is it going to change your life? Is it going to give you a life, a midlife crisis? No, but it was good. It was solid, fun, kind of popcorn movie.
Yeah, Was the CGI like good in this movie? Like, were there moments where you're like, this doesn't like look good? Because I feel like some like CGI in like the past few years, it almost seems like it's like getting better, but it also seems like it's regressing in some of like the Marvel and like big Disney movies where it just looks a little sloppy sometimes, and then the action isn't super intense. Did you have like any moments in this movie where the action actually gripped you, or was it just like, oh, it's fun and it's like a one-time watch type of movie?
It's a one-time watch kind of movie. It kind of feels like they kind of make his character a little more overpowered in this. So he just kind of feels like he's like a James Bond type of character where he just kind of kicks ass. Not quite a Rambo, but maybe in that kind of parallel where he's just dominating his opponents. The biggest thing is this movie is like usually in a Star Wars movie they're like fighting humans, but all he's fighting in the Mandalorian movie is just fish people and different alien creatures instead of fighting like physical combat. The villain in this was also pretty forgettable as well. Um, and they have Jabba the Hutt's son in this movie, which was an interesting choice, which
what
is not something that had been there before. But he's
when
like
does
this
this take
wrestler in Japan.
when does this take place chronologically?
It takes place after Return of the Jedi, but not before Force Awakens. So it's kind of like in the middle, in between eras, where the Empire doesn't exist anymore, but somebody's trying to build the Empire again. So it's just kind of in this weird in between period where nobody really knows what's going on because it's just like the Star Wars that Disney made. So yeah, overall, I would say it's solid. Sigourney Weaver is his lieutenant in this, which is cool. So you see a known face, but yeah, some interesting people. I don't. Yeah, again, this is a movie. I wouldn't go out and see the movie in theaters. Maybe this is a Disney Plus movie for sure, but it just feels like essentially season four of The Mandalorian. Instead of just making it a series, they just made it a movie. Which honestly, if they're gonna just keep doing that, I'll probably continue to go to the theater for it.
Yeah, it's like better than committing to like an entire like show where you can just make a movie, and it seemed like Star Wars just didn't really know what they wanted to do. And I think like box office wise, as far as the Star Wars movie, this movie definitely isn't successful, but I feel like if you're a fan of the Star Wars movies, you can definitely probably appreciate this one. But yeah, it just seems like one of those movies where Star Wars just needed to put something out so people realize that it does still exist and they're working on something. I saw a rumor that they were like thinking of just scrapping the trilogy they just made and then starting all over again.
Yeah, they might do that, and they probably should do that because of how badly they fucked up the saga. At this point, the only way that they can actually make content moving forward is if they just completely say, "Hey, this trilogy that we made just doesn't exist," because honestly, they just ruined it there. There's not a lot of things they can build off of it either. So yeah, I think just keep making movies like this. They're gonna make a Ryan Gosling movie. They have a couple other movies in production that are just kind of one-offs, kind of like a Rogue One or Han Solo movie. And honestly, I'd rather them do that than them continue the story. So that's what I think they should keep doing.
Yeah, because if you do a movie like that, it's either going to be like a just kind of inoffensive popcorn movie that's like one and done, or you have Rogue One where it's arguably the best Star Wars movie ever made.
Yeah, I would disagree with that, but I understand the sentiments there. I think like with those non-Skywalker movies, I mean, realistically, all they're making is popcorn movies anymore, anyways, for Disney. So you just have essentially just a space adventure once a year with Star Wars, and that's it. Or you're telling a story that fills in the gaps for the saga itself, like with Rogue One, that tells you how they got the Death Star plans to blow up the Death Star. It filled in those gaps, and they did a great job doing that, especially with that Darth Vader scene too. So if they just either fill in the gaps or just not continue the story, then Star Wars will be successful again.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things they'll have to make it no matter what to retain the rights to it. So I like honestly too, like I think what Star Wars should do is like get a director like Denis Villeneuve when he's done making Dune and say, "Hey, you should really remake the prequels because there's a lot of good stuff there, and the prequels like are fun and a lot of people like those movies, but if we're like remaking classics, I do think like if we did the prequel series like justice with good writing and less choreographed action, I do think that if Star Wars just wanted a home run hit, like, hey, we're actually remaking the prequels with Denis Villeneuve or some really good like cinematic director who you know is gonna like do a really good job with it, because I do think that's where Star Wars is great. Like the through lines, storylines, episodes, they feel larger than life. It's an event when it happens, and you know, even when they're bad, it is larger than life with how bad it is. Like with the last one, but it still gets people talking about it, which is eventually the goal. And they still made a ton of money off of the new trilogy too. So like, honestly, I think if they want to do something like just, I wouldn't touch the original trilogy, but remake the the old one, like 1 through 3.
With the prequels. Yeah, and as long as they don't fuck up the storyline, I think people would appreciate that. The thing is, the biggest issue with Star Wars is that no matter what they do, their fans are the biggest crybaby incel losers. So even if they made the greatest movie ever, they could make the fucking Godfather Part 2, and Star Wars fans are going to cry and moan about how awful it is. And then 20 years later, talk about how much they love it. So either way, the reason why that we're talking about a Star Wars Disney movie is because of how much they bitched and moaned at George Lucas for making the prequels. And now 20 years later, everybody loves the prequels. So it's like, no matter what, Star Wars fans are never going to be happy with what they release. So Disney should just might as well just try to farm and get as much money out of it as they possibly can.
Yeah, and like if you do the prequels, it's already a set storyline. You can't really mess up. And you just make it more focused than the original one and not make it weird and creepy. Like Jar Jar
Yeah,
Binks
and
doesn't you erased him from canon.
that would be something that they would support. And honestly, if they can't really make the dialogue worse in there. So just have like maybe you just have Hayden Christensen still be Anakin Skywalker and Natalie Portman is still Padme, but otherwise everybody else you recast and just say like, hey, this is the revised episodes 1 through 3. And I think people would support it.
And there is some like dark material to pull from with Star Wars, and you know, like Star Wars Rebels, how you have Darth Maul in that. So I do
Hmm.
think there would be room for like if Star Wars was like, hey, we're making a R-rated Darth Maul movie, and someone so is directing it, like Eli Roth or someone like Chad Stokowski, the guy who does the John Wick movies. Like one of
Yeah.
the Stokowski brothers is like doing a R-rated um, movie, or we have like Phil Lord and Chris Miller doing an R-rated like Darth Maul Star Wars movies, and it's a little bit funny too.
I heard that they're in talks of doing a horror movie potentially for Star Wars and kind of doing kind of like a original alien type premise where they're like stuck on a spaceship and one of these aliens just kind of takes over. That could be something that could actually be fun. If you want to keep it in the Star Wars universe but not make it as Skywalker centric, that could be something that I think people would enjoy, along with what you mentioned.
Yeah, it's like you can't just keep putting out like I feel like everyone is kind of over the like a mid like kind of slop stuff where it is good enough, but like box office wise, you're gonna continue to fail. So I do think it's time that they have to do something creative and try something new. Like we gotta break out of like the campiness for Star Wars, where they like I feel like the alien idea is a good idea, like making an R-rated like Darth Maul movie, like a Mace Windu movie if they get a good actor for him. You know, maybe have like Ryan Gosling play Mace Windu because Disney likes doing stuff like that. I think would be a good
Yeah.
casting choice.
Yeah. Or make Luke Skywalker like Kevin Hart, something like that.
Kumail Nanjiani.
Yeah. But yeah, nonetheless, Mandalorian, we'll see how it is. Tomorrow I'm watching Obsession, so I'll talk about how that is next week, which seems to be a lot more exciting. But what have you been watching of late?
Yeah, so I finished Tulsa King, so I was kind of in a show drought. It's like I don't know what to put on. Just put like on like a show to like fall asleep to, and I was like, you know what? It's time to watch Alaskan Killer Bigfoot. And
What the hell is this?
Alaskan Killer Bigfoot is a show where you have these three guys who are going to Portlock, Alaska, which was a town in Alaska that was abandoned around 1949 to 1950, where the residents were terrorized by a Bigfoot like creature known as the Nantinak, or yeah, I think it's pronounced Nantinak, who steals people. And then the lore described gruesome events starting in the early 1900s, including hunters disappearing and bodies being found, torn, or mutilated in ways that bears could not achieve. So everyone kind of left around 1949 to 1950, and they're trying to play up like the supernatural element and then Bigfoot here. And honestly, I watched it because I'm like, Alaska is a very cool cinematic place, and it's a very epic landscape, and it's one of those places on Earth that it's almost intimidating, and it's like so big and vast that the landscape almost scares you. And in this one, you
Hmm.
just see them driving over on the boat, and then just like the trees, the mountains, kind of the way it's filmed look very ominous, and they're playing up like kind of how scared they are of the supernatural entity or Bigfoot, like its discovery. So they're definitely playing that up, and they get there, and it's literally like three of them. They're told not to go into the forest, and the trees are pretty much on the shoreline there, and they're just camping out on the shore in Alaska, hoping to see if this is a town that they could potentially expand into, and build again there. So it's definitely a HBO show, but I picked it just because of the setting, and it has some funny moments, and I think like the overall atmosphere is intriguing.
Yeah, Alaska. That's a good site for it. Is it a documentary or is it like set in the times of the Bigfoot? If that makes sense. Like, is it during the time that it fights, or is it like the documentary?
So it's a documentary. So it's like a modern time. So you have three guys there. The show came out in 2025. So you have three guys just going to this place where everyone left back in 1950, and then they're essentially trying to go there to see if they could rebuild. And they're also scouting out and looking for signs of Bigfoot and seeing if he's still terrorizing people. So if you look up just Portlock, Alaska, supernatural lore, you'll have some stuff pull up here.
Yeah, I just looked it up. So, Portlac, abandoned ghost town, once a thriving sand and cannery. It was completely deserted by its residents in 1940 and officially closed in 1950. Residents report missing livestock, eerie streams, and eventually severed and mutilated bodies, turning up in a surrounding dense timber and beaches. Following years of terror, mounting deaths, and disappearances, panicked residents evacuated. So
Yeah.
the vibes had scared everybody off.
And you're
And now
also
it's a
like,
ghost town.
imagine living in Alaska in the 50s. Like, forget all the modern amenities we have now where it's damn near 80 years later since everyone left there, but you're living in Alaska in the 1940s and 50s. I mean, that doesn't seem like a good time.
This was like Russian Alaska, essentially. Um, so, and I also think just like ghost towns in general are fascinating to me. Just watching as everybody flocks out. So that could be fun. Did the people find Bigfoot? Was there any Bigfoot sightings?
Um, they haven't found Bigfoot yet, but one of the people on the show left because like what was happening was too intense. They essentially hired a bear guard for them just in case there was a bear there, and he like kind of came in. They're like, "Yeah, what do you think about Bigfoot?" And he's like, whatever." And then you see him just to start to notice like some weird things going on. One of the guys started to get sick, and then he got sick, so that was like one of the things other people were experiencing where they said it was the Bigfoot or the entity cursing them with disease, trying to keep them away. So then one of the guys, it was like too much pressure for him, so he wanted to leave. And this is supposed to be like a 40-day mission where they're gonna just sleep there and then kind of scout out the area for 40 days. And then one of them had to tap out already.
Damn. Okay. So it just kind of crumbled pretty quickly, it sounds like. But that's interesting. And that's on Max, you said?
Yeah, that's on Max right now.
Okay. Very nice. So yeah, we covered the NBA Finals, Knicks and Spurs. We gave our predictions there. We predicted all things AFC South, Colts, Jags, Texans, and Titans as well. Make sure to check that out. And then we talked about what we've been watching of late, give our Mandalorian and Alaskan Killer Bigfoot descriptions. Make sure you check out next week as we cover another division, and we'll be sure to discuss it there.
Stay brick.
Stay Rick.